Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Nermeen Sheikh. Protests against immigration raids are growing across the country despite threats by the Trump administration to deploy troops to cities beyond Los Angeles. On Tuesday night, California Governor Gavin Newsom gave a primetime address to decry the Trump administration's decision to send 4,000 National Guard and 700 Marines into the city.
If some of us could be snatched off the streets without a warrant, based only on suspicion or skin color, then none of us are safe. Authoritarian regimes begin by targeting people who are least able to defend themselves, but they do not stop there. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next. Democracy is under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived.
The New York Times reports National Guard troops are accompanying federal immigration officers on raids across Los Angeles. The Marines are also providing security to ICE agents. But Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has asked Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to authorize the Marines to make arrests as well. On Tuesday, President Trump spoke at Fort Bragg and compared the protests in Los Angeles to a foreign invasion as fears grow he may soon invoke the Insurrection Act.
What you're witnessing in California is a full-blown assault on peace, on public order, and on national sovereignty carried out by rioters bearing foreign flags with the aim of continuing a foreign invasion of our country.
Officials in California have accused Trump of trying to inflame the situation in Los Angeles. On Tuesday, LA Mayor Karen Bass enacted a curfew in part of downtown Los Angeles from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. Mass arrests were reported. Despite the crackdown, protests continued in LA for a fifth day on Tuesday.
This is basic human rights. They're arresting people that are working, they're arresting people at school, at graduation. That's sad and it's heartbreaking. We don't feel safe. We're standing up for the children that can't stand up for themselves or their parents.
In more news from California, on Tuesday, a U.S. district judge declined California Governor Newsom's emergency request to block Trump from sending in troops. The Pentagon is estimating it will cost $134 million to keep the National Guard and Marines in L.A. for the next 60 days. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth was questioned Tuesday during a congressional hearing by Democratic Congressmember Betty McCollum.
What training missions aren't happening, where are you pulling the money from, and how are you planning this in the moving forward?
So we have the funding to cover down on contingencies, especially ones as important as maintaining law and order in a major American city. As far as training, all of the units on the ground have been fully trained in their capabilities of what they're executing on the ground.
During the hearing, Hegseth admitted that he did not know what legal authority Trump was using to deploy troops in L.A. In related news, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has announced plans to deploy the National Guard to San Antonio and other cities as protests against ICE raids grow across Texas and the country. Here in New York, police arrested dozens of protesters Tuesday, including 24 at Trump Tower. Protests were also held in Philadelphia, San Francisco, Boston, Atlanta, Seattle, and other cities Tuesday. Meanwhile, Democratic Congressmember LaMonica McIver of New Jersey has been indicted on federal charges stemming from her arrest outside a Newark immigration detention center where she was conducting an oversight visit. Tanks and other armored vehicles are being transported to Washington, D.C. for a major military parade on June 14th, scheduled to coincide with Donald Trump's 79th birthday and the U.S. Army's 250th anniversary. On Tuesday, President Trump threatened heavy force would be used on anyone who protests at the parade.
And we're going to be celebrating big on Saturday. We're going to have a lot of, and if there's any protester who wants to come out, they will be met with very big force. By the way, for those people that want to protest, they're going to be met with very big force. And I haven't even heard about a protest, but, you know, this is people that hate our country, but they will be met with very heavy force.
This comes as protests against Trump's embrace of authoritarianism are being planned for Saturday in more than 1,500 cities. The protests are being organized under the banner of No Kings. We'll have more on the protests later in the program. Officials in Gaza have accused Israeli forces of killing at least 31 more Palestinians who were attempting to collect aid at a food distribution site south of Gaza City. A spokesperson for Gaza's civil defense said 200 people were also wounded as Israeli forces attacked the crowd with tanks and drones in the latest massacre on aid seekers. Britain, Norway, Canada, Australia and New Zealand have imposed sanctions on Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich and National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, two far-right members of Benjamin Netanyahu's government. British Foreign Secretary David Lammy spoke on Tuesday.
Well, these two individuals, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, have been inciting violence against Palestinian people for months and months and months. They have been encouraging egregious abuses of human rights.
Israel and the Trump administration denounced the sanctions on Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, which were announced as the Israeli military conducted its largest raid in years on the West Bank city of Nablus. In related news, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, has said the U.S. no longer backs an independent Palestinian state in the West Bank. Instead, Huckabee suggested Palestinians could form a state elsewhere if other Muslim nations donated land. Israel is continuing to hold 8 individuals who were detained Monday when Israeli Navy commandos intercepted a Gaza-bound boat carrying humanitarian aid. 4 other passengers on the Gaza Freedom Flotilla have already been deported, including Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg, who spoke to reporters Tuesday after being flown to Paris on her way back home to Sweden.
They did an illegal act by kidnapping us on international waters and against our will, bringing us to Israel, keeping us in the bottom of the boat, not letting us getting out and so on. But that is not the real story here. The real story is that there is a genocide going on in Gaza and a systematic starvation following the siege and blockade now, which is leading to food, medicine, water that are desperately needed to get into Gaza is prevented from doing so.
Protests erupted in Argentina Tuesday after the country's Supreme Court upheld a 6-year prison sentence for former President Cristina Kirchner, who has also been barred from seeking public office following a controversial corruption conviction. Kirchner was a populist leader who was known to be a champion of the poor. She criticized the ruling and the austerity policy of Argentine President Javier Milei.
I think they are wrong because they can put me in jail, but people will still receive miserable salaries or lose their jobs. They can put me in jail, but pensions will continue to be insufficient and people will not make ends meet. They can put me in jail, but medicines are more and more expensive and inaccessible, not only for retirees but for anyone. They can put me in jail, but parents will continue to believe that their children have the right to eat 4 meals a day. They can do all that and still it will not do them any good. It will take more or less time.
In news from Haiti, the number of internally displaced people has reached a record 1.3 million. The International Organization for Migration says the figure has jumped 24% since December due to escalating violence. This comes as President Trump has placed a travel ban on Haiti and 11 other countries. We'll have more on Haiti and the travel ban later in the show. In media news, ABC News is parting ways with longtime correspondent Terry Moran just days after he harshly criticized Trump advisor Stephen Miller in an online post. Moran had written in part, quote, "Miller is a man who is richly endowed with the capacity for hatred. He's a world-class hater." The news comes 6 months after ABC agreed to pay $15 million to Trump to settle a defamation lawsuit. In New Jersey, 4-term Congresswoman Mickey Sherrill has won the Democratic gubernatorial primary. Newark Mayor Ras Baraka placed second in the 6-way race. Jack Ciattarelli won the Republican primary. He's been endorsed by President Trump. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio has ordered the termination of all remaining overseas employees of USAID to complete the dismantling of the 6-decade-old agency. USAID was an early target of Elon Musk and DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Nermeen Sheikh in New York, joined by Amy Goodman in Salt Lake City, Utah. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Nermeen, and hello to all our viewers, listeners, and readers around the country and around the world. Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.